So what is insulin? And why do you need to know about it if you want to lose weight consistently and make your gut disappear forever? If you focus on getting a good insulin response or no insulin response at all whatsoever, you'll never have to worry about counting or restricting a single calorie ever again, counting your macros, or weighing your food, because none of these things actually address the root cause of weight gain, but insulin does. So I'm going to show you step by step how you can get a really good insulin response with each and every meal so you can lose weight not just weekly and monthly, but daily. Every single time you eat, you are taking steps towards your weight loss goal. So we got to start off by explaining what insulin is. So insulin is an anabolic hormone. In other words, it is responsible for growth. That's what anabolic means. It can be responsible for growth of good things and bad things, right? It can be responsible for the growth of muscles and the growth of your fat cells in the subcutaneous region or the visceral region. Subcutaneous meaning the fat that's built up around your skin, visceral meaning the fat that's built up around your organs, and that's certainly something that you do not want. So insulin, I'm going to go over a little bit of science here, so bear with me. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas through the beta cells, right? And its main responsibility is to regulate blood glucose levels to make sure that your blood sugar doesn't raise too high and it does not lead to atherosclerosis or any other form of cardiovascular risk that is associated with elevated blood sugar levels, right? So it's actually doing the right thing, is really a self-defense mechanism, insulin, by taking glucose from the blood and shuttling it off into the fat cell, right? Even though it's definitely not healthy for us to gain too much in the way of weight, it's a defense mechanism to defend us from cardiovascular risks. But, of course, over time, if insulin continues to shuttle more and more glucose into the fat cell, we start to notice that we have a little bit of a gut, we start to get overweight, and if it lasts for too long, you may start to notice some visceral fat built up around your organs, or you may even become insulin resistant. And insulin resistance is driven by hyperinsulinemia. Hyperinsulinemia is just a big term for insulin staying elevated for a long period of time, way too long, to the point to where your fat cells are overflown with all this glucose. And that's really the root cause of weight gain here. It's not calories, it's not macros, it's not the sheer weight of your food, it is the hormonal implications of what you're eating. So we're going to go over each macronutrient and the insulin response that you get from each one. So let's start with the first macronutrient being fat. If you were to eat an entire stick of butter from just pure saturated fat, right? Of course, none of you are going to do that, but just for the sake of the example here, you will not see insulin go up at all whatsoever. It's not going to raise your blood sugar. It's not going to force the pancreas to actually produce and secrete insulin because it's not going to raise your blood sugar levels. So even if you were to eat a whole stick of butter, you will not gain any body fat, which most fitness influencers and coaches would disagree with because they would say, oh, well, you're going to eat way too much in the way of calories. But once again, the calories do not address the root cause of weight gain. They're not addressing insulin, right? So fat does not formulate an insulin response at all whatsoever, and that's why I advocate for my clients to include as much in the way of dietary fat from saturated fat so that you can get little to no insulin response at all whatsoever. And that right there completely debunks the myth that saturated fat causes insulin resistance, causes type 2 diabetes, or leads to cardiovascular risk. Because if it did, insulin would have to go up to some degree, but it doesn't whenever you consume fat. So yes, definitely enjoy your saturated fats, enjoy your butter, enjoy your red meat, and enjoy your fattier cuts of meat because you want to be including those foods whenever you start to eat a very anti-inflammatory diet to lose weight. So protein will stimulate insulin, right? This is a second macronutrient. You'll see what's called a postprandial insulin response, meaning that insulin will rise, but it will go back down just as fast as it came up. The reason insulin goes up in the first place is because protein is full of all 9 essential amino acids, right? Especially if you're getting your protein from animals. And insulin, once again, is an anabolic hormone, so it is also responsible for the growth of your muscles. So it'll actually take these 9 essential amino acids and shuttle them off into the muscles to grow them, which is what we want. So once again, seeing a postprandial or an initial spike in your insulin is not necessarily a bad thing as long as your insulin levels go back down just as fast as it came up. It's only when it stays elevated for a long period of time, which we're about to get into right now, which is carbohydrates, right? So not all carbohydrates are evil, especially if you're metabolically healthy and you're not insulin resistant. natural carbohydrate sources from fruits and vegetables are totally fine if you're looking to lose anywhere between 30 to 50 pounds and you're not insulin resistant, you've had some blood work, and your hemoglobin A1C and your fasting insulin is on point. Just to break it down, whenever you're discussing natural carbohydrates, we got two people here. We got person A and person B. Person A is metabolically healthy, person B is metabolically unhealthy, right? So person A is not going to be insulin resistant and is not going to be hyperinsulinemic, meaning that their insulin is not going to be staying elevated for long periods of time, right? But person B is going to be insulin resistant, may even be a type 2 diabetic, and is metabolically unhealthy because their insulin levels are elevated for far too long for a long period of time, right? So coming back to person A here, it is totally fine to include some natural carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables, maybe even some pineapples and watermelons every now and then. But person B definitely needs to do more of a lower carbohydrate diet first, and maybe even a ketogenic or carnivore diet, just so they can modulate the function of insulin, because their insulin levels are just far too high for far too long. So the moment their fasting insulin improves, their hemoglobin A1C improves, then we can start to look to transitioning to a lower carbohydrate diet that's around 20 to 50 grams, or a moderate carbohydrate diet that exceeds 100 grams of carbohydrates per day. So once again, it depends on who you are. Run this by your doctor if you are insulin resistant or hyperinsulinemic or a type 2 diabetic, because I'm not a medical professional. I am a nutrition coach and a personal trainer. So run this video by your doctor if you are that person. So now going into processed forms of carbohydrates, sugars, and seed oils, all these things, all three, are going to put you in a position where your insulin stays elevated for a long period of time. And once again, the longer your insulin hormone stays elevated for, the more likely you are to store body fat in either the subcutaneous region or the visceral fat region, either around your skin or around your organs. All three of these very inflammatory foods will put you in a position where you are stimulating your insulin hormone, you are elevating your blood sugar or blood glucose levels, and you're putting your body in a position where it literally has no choice but to store body fat, because your body has to use 100% of the fuel that comes into your body, no matter what fuel source it is, even if it's processed garbage that comes from a brownie that is full of processed sugar. So just to kind of wrap it all up here, fat does not stimulate an insulin response at all whatsoever. Protein does, but it's in a very healthy way, usually to build muscle, especially if you're eating animal protein. Third, the most complicated, right? Natural carbohydrates versus processed carbohydrates. Natural carbs will stimulate insulin to some degree, but it will come back down just as fast as it came up if and only if you're metabolically healthy. The same cannot be said if you're metabolically unhealthy, insulin resistant, or even a type 2 diabetic. Now, of course, for everybody, whether you're metabolically healthy or metabolically unhealthy, you should completely exclude processed carbohydrates, processed sugars, and seed oils from your diet if you want to see the best in the way of results. So if you want to make your gut disappear, eat higher fat and higher protein foods. I'm talking about ribeyes, sirloins, 80-20% ground beef, chicken, seafood as your main course. And depending on how metabolically healthy or unhealthy you are, and depending on how much weight you're looking to lose, you can kind of toggle the carbohydrate daily intake and then slowly increase it over time as you lose more and more weight and you improve and modulate the function of insulin, because insulin is the ultimate predictor of how much body fat you're going to lose or gain. It's not calories, it's not macros, it is certainly not weighing your food, because all three of these things do not address the root cause of weight gain. And just remember, think about this next time a fitness coach or an influencer is on your phone, on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook telling you to count your calories, restrict calories, count your macros, or weigh your food even. If you were to get the same amount of weight, the same amount of macros, the same amount of calories with one food that has just one ingredient, let's say it's salmon, you get another food that has a paragraph of ingredients, let's just say it's a protein bar with soy protein isolate, one is going to give you a perfectly fine insulin response, an initial rise in insulin, and then insulin will go back down just as fast as it came up. That'll be for salmon. Now for the paragraph of ingredients in a protein bar that's loaded with processed sugar and really shitty soy protein isolate, you will see insulin stay elevated much longer in comparison to the salmon, if not 4 hours, depending on, once again, how metabolically healthy or unhealthy you are. So No matter how many macros or how many calories you count, no matter how many times you weigh your food, if you're constantly doing those things, you are not addressing the root cause of weight gain, which is the dysregulation of insulin, hyperinsulinemia, insulin staying elevated for a long period of time, and it being dysregulated. If you regulate insulin, you optimize the function of insulin, you will be able to lose weight consistently on autopilot without having to count or restrict a single calorie, without having to count a single macro, without having to weigh your food, or do any of the other bullshit that a fitness coach would tell you to do if you join their program or listen to them on social media. So don't be that person, be an outlier, and focus on optimizing your hormones and eat until you're physically satiated, until the emptiness feeling in your stomach is completely gone, and you will be able to lose weight consistently. No problem. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at It's Bobby O'Brien if you want to learn more about how I can help you lose weight consistently by optimizing the function of insulin. We got a lot of great short form content on there about insulin and many other hormones that are responsible for weight loss. So check me out over there. Until then, I will see you in the next video.